They calculated that the level of terrorism actually increased during this period, not decreased, and it increased by 6,500%. So it's not a small increase. And so this kind of seems to contradict the interests and the security of the US, and not only the US, but its allies. And especially some of the actions which were conducted in it. First of all, Afghanistan, which was seen initially, as the legitimate war, and Iraq, which was seen from pretty much the start as a more illegitimate war, which was started initially with the deceptive use of weapons of mass destruction and terrorism, but was later changed at the time of the Arab Spring, when they used the pretext of the US invasion of Iraq as being the spark for the Arab Spring. So this notion of it not within this regionalism of security, but spreading democracy. So this had evolved somewhat more. And of course for Iraq, this presents some problems for Turkey, especially the border with the Kurdish areas, which it's not in the security interests, of course. So that presents a hard security problem which needs to be maintained. Looking at the Arab Spring, which is yet another one of these regionalisms which has a brand, and if we look at the particular brand, Arab Spring, this is the way of narrating this particular regionalism. Arab defining the geographical area, and Spring, which is more to deal with managing expectations of the audience, because the audience that it's seeking is a more global one from a temperate climate. So not from, for instance, Egypt, but someone from United States, from Western Europe, from Australia, New Zealand, etc., where you have defined seasons. I was speaking with an Egyptian professor from Cairo, and she started saying, "Wow, what's spring for us Arabs?" And her answer was not what you would think if you came from England or France or somewhere like this. She said, it's this time of the year where you have strong winds and sand, very nasty time, not a time of hope at all, but something you have to endure. But this was very much presented within these ideas of the spread of democracy, and which seems contradictory, because spreading democracy through use of military force is not in itself a contradiction, rather than something which should inspire someone with faith that democracy will actually emerge from this. But this is about creating those different states and preventing the opposing states from coming together. That's the intention, but the result is quite different. Because if we look at the results of the Arab Spring, it's been quite catastrophic. Not only for the US security interests and so forth. I mean, as noted by Anthony Cordesman, he's noted the US since 2001 has started numerous wars. And as they keep on saying, we're the biggest military power the world has ever known, they haven't finished one of them. All of those wars are still ongoing. And this is having an interesting, if we want to put it in a diplomatic term, effect on US hard power. I mean, one can't really talk about US soft power at the moment because that evaporated some time ago. But the hard power, because what they're looking at is tangible hard power. Tangible hard power is how many soldiers they have serving, how many military vehicles they have, etc. And that is the potential of the military hard power. But the realisation of the military hard power comes from what's in the minds of those soldiers, their belief and confidence in the political leadership, the military leadership, and the will to fight. And one can see at the moment there are something over 5,000 US veterans are killing themselves, suicide, each year, which is an indication that there is an imbalance. You have the tangible hard power, but the intangible is not there. And one can see that for some part of this, Turkey has gone along with some of these particular ones. And this is keeping that first imperative working for the US. And it was not in the interests, as has been seen in the medium to long term. Now, this presents a problem because as long as Turkey works within the US system, in effect, what is happening is Turkey is an object of international relations. And what we can see currently is an evolution where Turkey is pursuing its own interests to some extent as a subject of international relations. And there are, and have been for some time, attempts to try and interfere with that. And one of the most obvious means is the use of what is called obstructive marketing. When people think marketing, this is the idea to promote yourself. You present your image, your brand, publicly. And this is where you get the legitimacy from. Well, obstructive marketing is when someone else grabs your persona, your image, and they mould it, in some cases negatively, to actually damage the image and reputation, which limits the ability to be an effective actor, in this case in international relations. And one of the most obvious ways of doing this is this idea of neo-Ottoman foreign policy, for example. And if we look at that particular application and how it's been used, well, it was first used in 1974, from what I can understand, by the Greeks during the time of Cyprus. But then in 1985, there's David Barchett from Chatham House, who said that Turkey could pursue a neo-Ottoman option. But these were isolated incidents, but one can see that this use or this attempt to market this neo-Ottoman foreign policy has increased from 2002 with the current government when it came to power. And so, I mean, the idea of interacting with the different countries which in the region, many of whom used to be part of the Ottoman Empire, the idea of neo-Ottoman foreign policy is not particularly appealing because of historical associations with this. And this is one way to limit those options to act independently, and it effectively destroys any kind of soft power potential, which this is the better path to pursue than hard power. Looking at Syria, this has changed considerably, and one has seen an evolution of the role of Turkey in the conflict. From the beginning to the current situation, so Turkey has gone from being an object to a subject. and this seems to be in fitting with what is happening more internationally with this evolving or transforming global system. So if we look at the evolving system, I mean, it rapidly went from a bipolar to a unipolar world. And this unipolar world, it's still there just, but it's faded a lot. And now it's, some say multipolar world has begun already, others say that this is going to be soon. US intelligence reports, some of them say by 2030 China will be the leading global power. So a lot of these things, these regionalisms, can also be seen within this context as a means to try and stave off, to prevent this evolution or transformation from taking place. But also, one can see how Turkey went from there to the current situation now, where with countries, diverse sets of countries, Iran, with Russia, and with these other ones, I mean, one of the most tangible signs that the so-called enemy have come together, that third imperative of Brzezinski, as well as the second, I mean the first imperative, that a certain level of collusion amongst the vassal states, is it's gone from this Geneva format of peace talks where the US was the powerful broker, trying to influence things towards regime change, but pretending to do that in peaceful terms, as an arbitrator. To what we see now, for example, Astana and these other ones, where the US has lost its ability to control the narrative